hoping he stays dry out there. The skies have just opened up here in Providence, so sending him dry thoughts. Up next, we have Carolyn Kepnes in with us over Skype. She's here to talk about her new book, Providence, and as a New England native, and the book focuses, the book's set here in New England, so we're excited to talk to her about her newest book. So welcome, Carolyn. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your book. What made you decide to set it in Providence?
So much. I mean, I went to school in Providence, and I have that nostalgia for the city. And over the years, it never goes away. Like, there's no place like Providence. The mysticism, the food, the wonder in the air everywhere. And I'm here in Cape Cod, where I'm from. So all of New England on a whole is just so forever intriguing to me.
So tell us a little bit about the book as well. It's a bit different than your past few books, which have been connected. One was the sequel to your first book. So what made you go down this young adult sci-fi mystery route?
For an adventure, for writing, every book is its own animal, and I always want to try something new. And I guess to me, the scariest place in the world right now at this particular moment is the human mind. And I loved the idea of going with these three people who are all missing someone terribly and being kind of eaten alive with wonder, especially at this moment when we have so much information and we're bombarded all the time with facts and lies and trying to figure out their feelings in this moment that we're in right now.
So just for some background, so the book focuses primarily on two young people. They're very good friends, and then they're separated when the boy John is kidnapped. And when he's released years later, it's discovered that he has these kind of psychic-ish powers.
Yes, he basically, when he feels anything for anyone nearby, they could die. And I loved the idea of someone who doesn't crave that kind of power, having that kind of power. And to me, we're with our phones so much and things are changing so rapidly that it was exciting to me to imagine something like Next Level, where it feels like, oh, this could actually be real within months, weeks.
Absolutely.
And then I wanted to get on both sides of a missing person situation where John goes missing and kind of already he's that kid who's missing something and doesn't quite fit in. And Chloe is defined by her friendship with him, and she needs him in that way to feel like her whole self. And it was so exciting to me to explore someone when they lose that person they think of as their person, and those other to be missing someone or to go missing.
Absolutely. So what were your main inspirations for writing this book? Did you draw from, I'm assuming you weren't kidnapped as a child yourself, but did you draw for inspiration from characters? Did you draw from people you know, or where did this all come from?
Well, yeah, I didn't spend 4 years in a basement, so that's good news.
That's good. That's good.
One of the things, especially being home on the Cape, that I'm reminded of, my brother and I cut through the woods every day on the way to school. And I think when you're a kid and you do anything regularly with someone, the moments that you do it alone, like when he was sick and I would be in the woods alone, I would be so aware that anyone watching could know, oh, she doesn't have him today, she's on her own. And I have that forever, like that sense memory of that terror feeling. And then, I mean, I draw from everywhere. Like, no one is directly from real life, but from people I know, people I read about, books. Like, it's the big answer, because to me, like, that's where I have so many references in my books to pop culture, because everything that I consume kind of comes out through the filter.
Absolutely. And so do you like to put little bits of your home into your books? I noticed that in your first book, the main character goes to school at Brown University. So is it that deep connection to New England filters out through your books?
Yeah, in every book, Providence appears at some point. The one I just finished writing, I think that right now there is no Providence, but you never know because it's a first draft. But yeah, it's the things that stay with you over years. And again, like, to me, impact my like growth as a writer. And so many great experiences happened in Providence with writing, especially one in a class where I read a lot of Lovecraft, and I remember walking around. And then one day during the time that I was taking that class, I woke up with a terrible, we'll just call it what it is, a hangover, a college hangover.
The worst.
And I felt awful, and I tried to read Lovecraft, and that has stayed with me for years. Is like, that was the hardest thing to do when hungover. And then I walked down the street and people were looking at me and I felt like a monster. And I went into a store and it's, it's something I love about New Englanders. They pull no punches. They tell you right to your face. And he said, honey, like, what are you doing out there? And I looked in the mirror and I had a blood vessel had popped in my eye. So I did look like a monster. So so when John wakes up and he's in that state, like that's definitely inspired by my version of that.
Absolutely. So what made you change? So if I understand correctly, your first book, it's an adult book. What made you delve more into a younger audience? Did you do that on purpose, or did it just kind of work out that way?
It's the way, like the first day I heard John's voice in my head, I was in a parking lot and I almost had an accident. And it was this moment of extreme vulnerability with a stranger. And I just heard his voice and I feel like maybe it had something to do with that vulnerability. But I think so my first two books were about, yes, a very cynical man in his 30s who's very judgmental. And it felt natural to switch gears and write about someone who's like kind of the least judgmental person, but almost painfully so, where that winds up being kind of an Achilles heel for him. Like you almost want him to be a little harder and a little more aggressive.
And so now that this book is out, you said you're working on another book. What's the next steps? Can you tell us a little bit about the new book, or is that's still pretty hush hush?
A little. I mean, it's always scary at this point because it's the first draft.
Of course.
I can tell you that it's about a woman in Concord, Massachusetts, and she wishes that she had a husband, so she goes to try and get one. And when things don't go her way, there is a little violence.
Sounds very interesting. And so is this, you seem to gravitate more towards kind of mystery, crime, drama-y type books. Is it just what you like to write? Do you like to read that? What pulls you in that direction?
Yeah, my whole life. I mean, I read and write some like different kinds of things, but there's nothing like starting a book and having that drive of like wanting to find out who did it, why they did it, all
Absolutely.
of that. I mean, I'm a junkie for all of that my whole life. And I love to be scared. I have like a great love-hate relationship with it where I read like, a million scary things and then watch something really fluffy. So I like that cycle and I like to scare myself. To me, that's a good like writing feeling.
Interesting. Well, I like it. It's a great approach. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and talking about your book, Providence, and advise everyone out there to check it out. It's a great rainy day read for days like today. And Carolyn Kepnes, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to your next project whenever that shows up. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And thank you all so much for being with us today here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm your GoLocal host, Rachel Nunes.